Eleanor, at 62 years young, was a beacon of warmth in her small, cozy home. Her silver hair, often pulled back in a neat bun, framed a face that held the gentle lines of a life well lived and well loved. She moved with a quiet grace, her hands, though a little gnarled from years of gardening and baking, always ready to offer comfort or a warm meal. For Eleanor, the world revolved around her family. Her two grown children, David and Sarah, were her pride and joy, and her grandchildren were the sparkling stars in her sky. She truly believed that family was everything, the unbreakable core of her existence. Every Sunday, her house hummed with laughter and the delicious smells of her famous roast chicken. David would arrive with his boisterous energy, telling stories that made everyone chuckle, while Sarah, ever the planner, would help set the table with her usual elegant touch. Eleanor would watch them, a soft smile playing on her lips, her heart swelling with contentment. This was her legacy, she often thought, this tapestry of love and shared moments. She had poured her entire being into nurturing these bonds, always putting their needs and happiness before her own. If one of the grandchildren needed a ride, Eleanor was there. If David or Sarah faced a problem, her advice, always gentle and wise, was freely given. She never asked for anything in return, content in the knowledge that her family was happy and together. It was a simple philosophy, deeply rooted in her soul, that family came before all else. This unwavering belief had guided her through decades, shaping her choices and defining her purpose. Little did she know, this very foundation was about to be shaken to its core. The comforting rhythm of Eleanor's life, so full of family warmth, was suddenly broken. Her beloved Arthur, her partner in laughter and quiet companionship for over 40 years, fell ill quite quickly. Despite Eleanor's tender care and the hopeful prayers of their children, Arthur faded away one peaceful morning, leaving behind a silence that echoed through every room of their home. Eleanor felt a deep, aching hole in her heart, a loss that seemed too big to carry. She moved through the days in a haze, finding comfort only in the familiar scent of Arthur's old armchair and the memories they had built together. After the funeral, a somber affair attended by many who admired Arthur, came the unavoidable task of dealing with his estate. Arthur had always been a man of order and foresight, so it was no surprise that he had a will. He had often spoken of its importance, ensuring everything would be clear and fair for Eleanor and the children. The day for the reading of the will arrived, a crisp Tuesday morning. Eleanor sat at the head of their dining room table, a place Arthur had always occupied, feeling a mix of sadness and a quiet sense of duty. David and Sarah sat opposite her, looking serious and a little restless. Mr. Henderson, Arthur's longtime lawyer, cleared his throat, his spectacles perched low on his nose. He held a thick envelope, the legal document within it containing the final words of a good man, words that would outline how his life savings and the home they had shared would be divided. Eleanor knew Arthur would have wanted to provide for his family, as he always had. She braced herself, ready to hear the details of his thoughtful plans. Mr. Henderson's voice was calm and steady as he read through the legal terms, his words painting a picture of Arthur's careful planning. Eleanor listened, her mind drifting between the present moment and sweet memories of Arthur. He had always been a generous man, quietly helping others without seeking praise. She knew his will would reflect his kindness. The will outlined that Eleanor would receive the house and a comfortable sum of money, ensuring her security. Then came the part about David and Sarah. Their eyes widened slightly as Mr. Henderson detailed their shares, which were substantial and fair. Eleanor felt a wave of relief. Arthur had taken care of everyone, just as she expected. But then, Mr. Henderson cleared his throat again, pausing briefly before continuing. And finally, he stated, his voice now carrying a note of formality, Arthur has bequeathed a significant portion of his remaining assets, specifically 30% of his total estate, to the Hope Springs Children's Foundation. A stunned silence filled the room. Eleanor blinked, surprised but not entirely shocked. She remembered Arthur speaking fondly of the charity, which helped sick children. He had even volunteered there a few times. It was a large amount, yes, but it felt like Arthur. David, however, shifted abruptly in his chair, a frown creasing his brow. Sarah gasped, a small, sharp sound that broke the quiet. Their faces, moments before reflecting quiet acceptance, now twisted into expressions of disbelief and something akin to anger. The air in the room suddenly felt thick, heavy, with unspoken questions and growing tension. Eleanor glanced from her children's shocked faces to the lawyer, sensing that the careful peace of the morning had just shattered. The stunned silence after Mr. Henderson's announcement quickly gave way to a surge of sharp, angry words. "A charity?" David exclaimed, his voice rising, his face flushed. 30%? Dad always said he was providing for us. He slammed his hand lightly on the table, making the teacups rattle. Sarah, usually composed, looked equally furious. "This is outrageous, Mother. Why would he give away so much of our inheritance to strangers?" "We're his children." She turned to Mr. Henderson, her eyes narrowed. "Is there some mistake? Can this be changed?" Eleanor felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She tried to interject. "Arthur always had a kind heart, children. He cared deeply about those poor." But David cut her off, his eyes blazing. "Kind heart? Mother, we're talking about a huge amount of money. Money that should be ours. Money that could help buy bigger houses, send our children to better schools." His voice was laced with a sense of betrayal. "He worked his whole life for this, and he just gives it away?" Sarah chimed in. "It's not fair, Mother. It's simply not fair. We are his direct descendants. We deserve every penny." She spoke as if Arthur's generosity was a personal insult, a deliberate slight against them. Eleanor watched them, a deep sadness settling over her. Their faces, once familiar and loving, were now contorted with a fierce, grasping anger. It wasn't about the good Arthur wished to do. It was solely about what they felt they had lost. The grief for their father seemed to have been swallowed whole by this sudden, consuming desire for more. Their words stung, making her feel as though Arthur's final wish, his gentle act of kindness, was being trampled underfoot by their sheer indignation. The belief that they deserved it all hung heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the loving family she thought she knew. The initial shock and anger from David and Sarah soon turned into a direct attack on Eleanor. After Mr. Henderson left, leaving a strained silence in his wake, Sarah turned to her mother, her voice sharp with accusation. "Mother, why aren't you doing anything about this? You were Dad's wife. You should be able to change it." Eleanor, still reeling from the sudden shift in her children's demeanor, tried to reason with her. "But Sarah, this was Arthur's wish. He made it clear. I can't just go against his will." David scoffed, pacing the living room. "Can't or won't, Mother. You always put Dad first, even when it meant less for us. Now, even after he's gone, you're letting him give away what's rightfully ours." He stopped in front of her, his eyes narrowed. "You're the executor, aren't you? You have the power to challenge this, to get back what belongs to us." Eleanor felt a wave of disbelief. "Challenge Arthur's wishes? My husband's final testament? How can you even suggest such a thing? He was a good man, and he wanted to help children in need." "He should have helped his children in need first," Sarah cried, tears welling in her eyes, though Eleanor suspected they were tears of frustration more than sorrow. "You're letting us down, Mother. You're not fighting for us. For your own family." The accusation stung Eleanor more deeply than any of their earlier angry outbursts. She, who had always championed her children, was now being painted as their adversary. They truly believed she was failing them, not by upholding Arthur's kind heart, but by not being greedy enough for their sake. The room, once filled with comforting memories, now felt like a battlefield, with Eleanor standing alone against her own children, accused of disloyalty to the very family she held so dear. Their words chipped away at the foundation of trust she thought they shared, replacing it with suspicion and a bitter sense of entitlement. Eleanor looked at her children, her heart aching with a mixture of sorrow and a desperate need for them to understand. "Please listen to me," she pleaded, her voice soft but firm. "Arthur loved you both very much. He made sure you were both well provided for. But he also had a deep desire to help others, especially children who were suffering. She tried to paint a picture of Arthur's quiet acts of kindness. Do you remember when Arthur volunteered at the Hope Springs Christmas Fair? He told me about a little girl he met there, no older than your own Lily, Sarah, who was very sick. It touched him deeply. He wanted to make a difference, even a small one, for children like her. Eleanor's eyes pleaded with them, hoping to rekindle some flicker of their father's compassionate spirit within them. This donation isn't a slight against you. It's a testament to his good heart. It's truly what he wanted to do with a portion of what he earned. But her words seemed to fall on deaf ears, bouncing off a wall of stubborn resentment. David crossed his arms, his jaw tight. Mother, we appreciate Dad's good heart, but charity begins at home. Our home. His family. This money could have done so much for us. He emphasized us with a dismissive wave. Sarah picked up the thread. It's easy to say he wanted to help others, but he left us with less. How can you expect us to accept that? It feels like he valued strangers more than his own children. Her voice was sharp, cutting through Eleanor's attempts to explain. They wouldn't even let her finish a sentence, interrupting with their own grievances and calculations of what they believed was unjustly taken from them. Eleanor saw a coldness in their eyes, a hardened resolve that shut out any notion of empathy or understanding for Arthur's final selfless act. Their minds were made up, their ears closed to anything but the echo of their own perceived loss. The initial disagreements quickly soured into something much uglier. What began as arguments about money soon twisted into a painful unraveling of family history. The children's frustration with Eleanor's refusal to fight Arthur's will turned into bitter accusations. You always let Dad walk all over you, Mother. David spat one afternoon, his voice echoing loudly through the phone. This is just another example. You never stood up for yourself, or for us. Sarah chimed in on a separate call, her tone dripping with venom. Remember when Dad wouldn't let me go to that expensive art school? He said it was too much money. But he could just give it away to a charity? It's always been like this, hasn't it? You two always put your own ideas first, never truly caring about what we wanted. Hurtful words, sharp as shards of glass, flew from their mouths, tearing at Eleanor's heart. They brought up old grievances, tiny slights from childhood that Eleanor had long forgotten, twisting them into evidence of a lifetime of parental neglect. One evening, during a tense dinner that quickly devolved into shouting, David even mentioned a time Arthur had made a bad business investment years ago. He was reckless with his money back then, and now he's doing it again, even from the grave. And you, Mother, you just stood by and let him. Eleanor felt a searing pain. This wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It was about tearing down the memory of Arthur and attacking her own character. The arguments became less about the charity and more about a deep-seated resentment that Eleanor hadn't realized festered beneath the surface of their seemingly happy family. Each conversation ended in tears, usually hers, and a deeper crack in the foundation of what she thought was an unbreakable bond. The loving family she believed in was dissolving before her eyes, replaced by angry strangers wielding old wounds like weapons. Eleanor sat alone in her quiet living room, the echoes of her children's angry voices still ringing in her ears. Each accusation, each sharp word, had chipped away at her heart, leaving her feeling hollow and utterly heartbroken. The people she saw now, consumed by a fierce hunger for money, were not the David and Sarah she had raised. The kind, thoughtful children who once brought her handmade cards and shy smiles seemed to have vanished, replaced by strangers with hard eyes and bitter complaints. She tried to understand. Was it truly about the money, or was there something else, a deeper hurt she had missed? But their words were so focused on what they felt they were owed, on the imagined slights, that it left little room for any other explanation. Their greed, raw and undisguised, had painted over the familiar faces of her son and daughter, making them unrecognizable. She looked at old family photos, a picnic by the lake, a Christmas morning, a graduation, and saw the joyful, loving faces of her children. Now, when she called them, their voices were cold, distant, filled only with demands about the inheritance. The confusion weighed heavily on her. How could something as pure as family love be so easily overshadowed by money? She had always believed their bond was unbreakable, a sanctuary from the outside world. Now her sanctuary felt like a battlefield, and she, the one who built it, was left wounded and bewildered. It was as if a spell had been cast, turning her cherished children into figures driven by a single, destructive desire. The pain of this transformation was almost as great as losing Arthur, because in a way, she felt she was losing her children too. The shift in her children's behavior wasn't just limited to harsh words. It soon became a chilling absence. The weekly Sunday dinners, once a joyful tradition, simply stopped. No calls to explain, just silence. Eleanor would cook, hoping against hope they might show up, only to find herself eating alone, the large dining table feeling vast and empty. When her phone did ring, it was never for a chat, or to ask how she was doing. It was always David or Sarah, their voices flat and formal, asking about the progress of the estate, or demanding updates on the charity share. "Have you spoken to Mr. Henderson again, Mother?" David would press, his tone impatient. "We need to know what steps are being taken." Sarah's calls were similar, filled with thinly veiled threats about legal action if Eleanor didn't comply with their wishes. There was no "How are you, Mom?" or "Did you have a good day?" The warmth that once defined their relationship had completely evaporated, replaced by cold, calculated inquiries. Eleanor felt a profound loneliness settle over her. She missed the simple things: Sarah's laughter, David's teasing, the innocent chatter of her grandchildren. They used to drop by, just to say hello, or to help with a chore. Now her house felt too quiet, too big. The vibrant energy that filled her life was gone, replaced by a heavy silence. She tried reaching out, leaving messages, but her calls went unanswered or were met with terse replies. It was clear they were avoiding her, except when it came to the money. This deliberate distance, this emotional starvation, made her feel utterly abandoned. She was their mother, yet she was being treated like an obstacle, a gatekeeper to what they believed was rightfully theirs. The family she had so lovingly nurtured was crumbling, leaving her isolated and profoundly alone. One quiet evening, as Eleanor sat flipping through an old photo album, a profound and painful realization settled over her. She saw pictures of Arthur, his kind smile, his strong hands holding his children. She remembered his gentle wisdom, his quiet generosity. Yet her children's words had tarnished his memory, painting him as reckless or uncaring. And her own attempts to defend him, to explain his true nature, had been met with scorn. It hit her with the force of a physical blow. Their love for money, for the idea of a larger inheritance, was stronger than their love for her, their own mother. It was stronger, too, than any respect or affection they held for their father's memory. They were willing to tear down his good name, to disregard his final wishes, and to inflict deep pain on her, all for a sum of money they felt entitled to. The realization was stark, cold, and undeniable. The sweet memories of shared laughter, of hugs, of comforting words, they all seemed to pale in comparison to the fierce glint in her children's eyes when they spoke of the inheritance. They hadn't just changed. Their priorities had shifted so dramatically that money now sat at the very top, above family, above loyalty, above kindness. It wasn't just that they wanted more, it was that they valued that desire above everything else. This understanding brought with it a fresh wave of grief, different from the sadness of losing Arthur. This was the grief of losing a fundamental belief, the heartbreak of seeing her children, whom she loved unconditionally, betray the very essence of what she thought family meant. It was a bitter pill to swallow, this truth, that their love, once seemingly boundless, had a price tag, and that price was higher than she could ever afford to pay. The bitter truth that had dawned on Eleanor left her reeling. For decades, family first had been her guiding star, the unwavering principle that shaped every decision, every sacrifice. She had poured her heart and soul into creating a haven of love and support, believing wholeheartedly that her children shared this sacred value. But now, with the cold reality of their actions, she began to question everything. Did David and Sarah ever truly believe in family first, in the same way she did? Or was it merely a convenient phrase, a comfortable assumption, that benefited them? She remembered all the times she had put their needs before her own, foregoing a trip to help David with a down payment, spending countless hours babysitting Sarah's children, always being the first to offer help or a listening ear. She had done it out of pure, unconditional love, expecting nothing more than the continuation of their warm, connected family. But their recent behavior painted a starkly different picture. Their greed had not only eclipsed their respect for Arthur's wishes, but also their concern for her well-being. Their hurtful words, their cold avoidance, their relentless focus on the money, it all screamed that for them, family first was conditional, easily discarded when a larger personal gain was at stake. The very foundation of her life, the bedrock of her beliefs, felt like it was crumbling. Had she been naive? Had she mistaken their acceptance of her boundless love for a shared philosophy? The questions gnawed at her, making her feel adrift in a world that suddenly felt unfamiliar and cruel. The warmth of her past memories now carried a chilling undercurrent of doubt, making her wonder if the love she gave had ever truly been reciprocated in the way she imagined. The confusion and heartbreak lingered, but alongside it, a quiet strength began to bloom in Eleanor. She had spent a lifetime putting others first, particularly her family. Now faced with the bitter truth of her children's greed, she realized that to honor Arthur, and to truly honor herself, she had to stand firm. The family-first ideal she held so dear had been trampled, but Arthur's legacy of kindness remained, and that she could protect. One morning, after a particularly cold phone call from David, Eleanor sat down with a cup of tea and a clear mind. She thought of Arthur, of his gentle smile, and how important his charitable work had been to him. To back down now, to fight his will, would be to betray his memory and everything he stood for. It would be to let greed win. She called Mr. Henderson, Arthur's lawyer. "I want to proceed exactly as Arthur outlined in his will," she stated, her voice steady and resolute. "There will be no challenges, no changes. His wishes are to be respected fully." Mr. Henderson expressed his quiet admiration for her resolve. Eleanor knew this decision would not make her children happy. In fact, it would likely deepen their anger and resentment. The thought brought a pang of sadness, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of peace. She could not control their choices, their greed, or their hurt, but she could control her own integrity. She would not allow their demands to dictate her actions, or to erase the goodness of Arthur's final gift. If this meant her children would stay angry, if it meant the rift would widen, then so be it. She would rather stand alone, upholding what was right, than compromise her values for their sake. It was a difficult decision, but for the first time in a long time, Eleanor felt a quiet certainty in her heart. With her decision firmly made, a quiet strength settled in Eleanor's heart, allowing her to look beyond the immediate pain. The void left by her children's distance was still there, a dull ache, but she refused to let it consume her. Instead, she began to fill her days in new ways, ways that brought genuine comfort and joy. She reconnected with old friends, women she had known for decades, but had drifted from, due to her constant focus on family. There was Margaret, with her hearty laugh and love for bridge, and Susan, a fellow gardening enthusiast who shared Eleanor's passion for roses. Their conversations were light and easy, free from the tension and demands that had come to define her interactions with David and Sarah. They listened to her with open hearts, offering empathy without judgment, reminding her of the kindness that still existed in the world. Eleanor also embraced new activities. She joined a book club at the local library, delighting in discussions about stories and ideas that expanded her world. She enrolled in a watercolor painting class, something she had always wanted to try, but never had the time for. Her hands, once busy with baking for family gatherings, now found joy in mixing colors and creating vibrant landscapes. The strokes of her brush were a calming balm to her soul. She started volunteering at the Hope Springs Children's Foundation, the very charity Arthur had chosen, feeling a deep connection to his memory through her service. Her life slowly began to reshape itself, no longer orbiting around the unpredictable demands and emotional roller coasters of her children. It was a life built on her own interests, her own choices, and the genuine connections she shared with others. She realized she was not alone, even without her children's constant presence. She was building a new kind of family, one woven from shared interests and mutual respect, a life that truly felt like her own. As Eleanor's new life began to take shape, filled with the warmth of genuine friendships and the satisfaction of new hobbies, a profound understanding settled within her. The pain of her children's actions hadn't vanished completely, but it no longer held her captive. Through the kindness of Margaret and Susan, the camaraderie of her book club, and the shared purpose with fellow volunteers at the charity, Eleanor learned a powerful truth. True family wasn't just about the blood that ran in your veins. It was about respect. The way her friends listened without judgment, the way they valued her opinions. It was about love. The easy affection and support they offered, simply because they cared. And it was about understanding, the shared glances, the unspoken comfort that came from truly seeing and accepting one another. These were the qualities she had always believed her family possessed, but which her children's greed had stripped away. She saw how her new connections embodied these values. The volunteers at Hope Springs, strangers united by a common goal, felt more like family than David and Sarah did in their current state. They shared a sense of purpose, a genuine desire to uplift others, echoing Arthur's own benevolent spirit. Eleanor realized that while her biological children had chosen to prioritize material wealth, she had found a different kind of richness in these new relationships. Her heart, once broken by betrayal, was slowly mending, filled with a deeper, more expansive definition of family. It wasn't about obligation or inherited ties. It was about chosen connections, built on mutual care and a shared humanity. This revelation brought not just comfort, but a quiet, enduring joy. Eleanor's journey through grief and betrayal had been long and painful, but as the seasons turned, she found herself standing on solid ground once more. The quiet joy she discovered in her new connections and activities had woven a strong new fabric for her life. More importantly, a deep sense of peace settled within her, a peace born from knowing she had honored Arthur's memory. Every time she volunteered at the Hope Springs Children's Foundation, seeing the smiles on the children's faces, she felt Arthur's presence, a warmth that transcended his physical absence. She knew, with absolute certainty, that she had done right by him. She had upheld his final, generous wish, a testament to the good man he was. This unwavering conviction was her anchor, holding her steady amidst the ongoing silence from David and Sarah. The separation from her children was, without a doubt, difficult. There were still moments of longing, especially when she saw other families together. She missed her grandchildren's hugs and the easy banter she once shared with her own kids. But the sharp, agonizing pain had softened into a dull ache, a scar, rather than an open wound. She understood now that she couldn't force them to see beyond their own desires. Their choice to prioritize money over family was theirs, and she had to accept it, even if it meant a permanent rift. Eleanor, at 62, had learned a harsh but vital lesson. Family, in its truest sense, was not just about shared blood, but shared values, respect, and unconditional love. She had found that love and respect again, not where she expected, but in the new chapters of her life. She closed her eyes, picturing Arthur's kind face, and knew she had chosen the path of integrity, and in that she found her ultimate peace.